Time now for a check of what's happening in the world of business. Yuka Roy joins me now. Hi there, Yuka. We've been talking a lot about the French territory of New Caledonia, swept with violence in recent days. The economy also looks like it's really struggling.
Well, shops and businesses have been looted and set ablaze in the ongoing unrest, even as the Pacific Ocean archipelago had already been facing severe economic challenges for years. Brian Quinn has the details.
Outside bakeries and pharmacies in Noumea, long lines Wednesday morning as shortages of staples like rice and bread hit the French overseas territory of New Caledonia after a night of riots and looting. Car dealerships and big box stores among the businesses targeted by rioters. The damages from 3 days of unrest estimated at some 150 million euros.
We have more than 100 businesses, factories, shops looted, burnt or destroyed. 1,500 jobs will be lost.
It's a new dark cloud over the New Caledonian economy after years of structural challenges. The unemployment rate has risen to 11%, 4 points higher than in mainland France. Hardest hit are the indigenous Kanak population, 16% of whom are jobless. More than 1 in 5 New Caledonians live below the poverty level. It's a recipe for unrest in a territory where consumer prices are 31% higher than the mainland.
It's clear from the people we're seeing at the roadblocks, these riots come from social inequality, a lack of opportunity, downward mobility.
The situation is exacerbated by a crisis in the nickel industry, which is responsible for up to 25% of the territory's jobs and 97% of its exports. The world's number 3 producer of the metal, critical for battery production, New Caledonia has been hit by a steep drop in commodity prices amid competition from neighboring Indonesia. Meanwhile, energy costs for its processing have skyrocketed. Paris has offered energy subsidies and loans to stave off a collapse. The local government, though, has so far rejected the deal.
OK, so now we're moving on to the planemaker Boeing, which could be criminally charged over 2 fatal crashes that involved its passenger jets. Tell us more.
Well, the US Justice Department said Boeing had breached its obligations under a deal made in 2021, which shielded the planemaker from criminal prosecution over 2 737 MAX crashes that killed a total of 346 people back in 2018 and 2019. In a court filing in Texas on Tuesday, the DOJ said that Boeing had failed to, quote, design, implement and enforce a compliance and ethics program to prevent and detect violations of the US fraud laws throughout its operations. Boeing denies it has violated any terms of the agreement, which it signed to avoid being prosecuted on a charge of conspiring to defraud the US Civil Aviation Authority. As part of the deal, it also agreed to pay $2.5 billion, which included compensation payments to victims' families, and promised to overhaul its compliance practices. However, a series of major incidents, including the in-flight blowout of a door panel in January, have exposed continuing safety and quality issues at the planemaker. Boeing has until June the 13th to respond to the Justice Department, Tom.
OK, got some new economic data out today that suggests that inflation is cooling off in the US.
After a stickier than expected first quarter, US consumer price index rose 0.3% in April, after climbing 0.4% in 2 previous months. On an annualized basis, the rise was 3.4%. The core CPI that excludes volatile food and energy stood at 3.6% year-on-year. Inflation has dropped considerably from a peak of 9.1% in June of 2022, but progress has stalled in recent months, Tom. And shares on Wall Street are rallying as the April data fueled hopes that inflation is finally heading back in the right direction. The S&P has broken above 5,300 points for the first time. The Nasdaq is also trading above its previous record, while yields on US Treasury bonds eased on expectation that the new CPI data could persuade the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates this year.
OK, here in Europe, it seems that prices are going to come down faster this year.
The European Commission says it expects inflation to fall to 2.5% in 2024, down from a previous forecast of 2.7%. The EU's Economy Commissioner says it's on track to meeting the European Central Bank's target of 2% in the second half of next year, but warned about potential impact of geopolitical turmoil. Let's take a listen.
Of course, downside risks and uncertainty remain. They are very elevated, and they are mostly connected to the wars in our borders and in the Middle East.
Well, the new inflation forecast comes as fresh data showed the EU economy grew 0.3% in the first 3 months of this year, after shrinking 0.1% in the previous 2 quarters consecutively. Germany and France both grew 0.2% from the previous quarter. Spain was the strongest performer among major Eurozone economies.